I didn't lose my wife the night I caught her. I lost my entire family. And the worst part? Every single one of them was sitting at my dinner table the whole time, passing food, laughing at my jokes, looking me dead in the eye, while carrying a secret that belonged to me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it started, because looking back now, the signs were everywhere. I just didn't know what I was looking at. My name is Daniel. I'm 34 years old, and until 14 months ago, I thought I understood what it meant to have people who loved you. Sarah and I met in college, the kind of story you tell at dinner parties because it sounds almost too clean. We dated for 4 years, got engaged, got married in my parents' backyard on a Saturday in June. String lights in the oak tree, my grandmother crying in the front row, my brother Marcus standing right beside me, hand on my shoulder, telling me I'd done good. 6 years of marriage, 6 years of building something I thought was real. And somewhere inside those 6 years, without me ever noticing, someone had started quietly taking it apart. Here's something nobody tells you about being betrayed. There are always signs. You just need the right context to read them. At the time, I explained everything away. That's what trust does to you. It makes you generous with other people's behavior. It makes you assume the best. Like the Christmas before last. We were all at my parents' house. The whole family crowded into that warm living room that always smells like pine and my mother's cooking. I remember making a joke about Marcus, and Sarah walked in from the kitchen right in the middle of it. The room went slightly quiet. Not obviously. Not in a way you'd catch unless you were looking for it. I wasn't looking. Or the family barbecue last July. It was one of those golden summer evenings, warm and lazy. I was at the grill, talking to my uncle, completely in my element. At some point, I looked across the yard and noticed my cousin Becca having what looked like a very intense conversation with Marcus near the back fence. I remember thinking it was a little odd. Becca and Marcus weren't particularly close. Then Sarah walked over and joined them, and the three of them stood together for a minute before laughing about something and drifting apart. I turned back to the grill. I didn't think about it again. Until the night my entire world rearranged itself, and I started replaying every moment I'd dismissed, looking for the shape of what I'd missed. There was also the way Sarah had started talking about Jenna more, her friend from work. Jenna this, Jenna that. Every other week she was going to Jenna's for dinner, or they were catching a movie, or Jenna needed help with something. I never questioned it. I liked that Sarah had a close friend. I thought it was healthy. Now I wonder if Jenna even knew she was being used as a cover story. It was a Tuesday evening in October, cold and still in that particular autumn way, where the air feels like it's holding its breath. Sarah kissed me on the cheek at 6:30, grabbed her bag, and said she was going to Jenna's. "Don't wait up. We're probably just doing movies and wine." I said okay. I warmed up some leftovers and sat on the couch with the game on. And for about 20 minutes, I was perfectly fine. Then my buddy Ray called. His car wouldn't start. He lived 2 streets over from Marcus, so I threw on a jacket, grabbed my jumper cables, and drove over. Nothing significant, just a favor. I took the long route out of habit, past Marcus's street, past the row of oak trees that lines his block, past the pale blue house I'd helped him move into 3 years ago. And there it was, Sarah's car, parked in my brother's driveway. I actually laughed. An involuntary, hollow sound in an empty car. There had to be an explanation. Sarah was dropping something off. Jenna was there for some reason. Maybe, and I know how desperate this sounds, maybe Marcus had borrowed her car and she'd picked it up earlier and parked it there temporarily, and I stopped rationalizing. I knew that car. The small dent on the rear bumper from the parking garage incident she'd been meaning to fix for 2 years. The Starbucks cup in the cup holder. The reusable grocery bag folded in the back seat. That was Sarah's car, and there was no version of reality where it wasn't. I kept driving. I helped Ray with his car. I barely said 10 words. He asked if I was okay. I said I was tired. On the way home, I drove past Marcus's house again. The car was still there. I don't entirely know what made me stop. Maybe it was the fact that the living room light was on and I could see a faint glow coming from somewhere deeper in the house. Maybe it was the part of me that already knew, the part we pretend doesn't exist until it has no choice but to speak up. I parked a little way down the street, not directly in front, far enough to feel less like a confrontation and more like a mistake I could walk back from. I sat in the car for 10 minutes. I argued with myself. You're being paranoid. You're about to humiliate yourself. She's going to be so upset when she finds out you drove past her friend's house to check up on her. But she hadn't said she was at her friend's house. She'd said Jenna's, not Marcus's. I got out of the car. The porch light was off. The front curtains were pulled almost all the way across, but not all the way. There was a gap at the edge of the window, just wide enough. I looked through it. Sarah and Marcus were on the couch together, close. The television was on, but neither of them was watching it. Her head was angled slightly toward his. He was talking, quiet and easy, the way you talk to someone when you're completely comfortable with them. And she was smiling, not politely, not the smile you give when something is mildly funny. She was smiling the way people smile when they feel safe. Then he reached over and brushed a strand of hair away from her face. She let him. She closed her eyes for just a second, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I stood on that porch until my legs started to feel like they belonged to someone else. Then I walked back to my car, sat down, and stared through the windshield at the dark street in front of me. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually, I drove home. Sarah came home around 11. I was sitting in the kitchen with the lights off. She didn't notice at first. She was on her phone, still smiling at something. And then she looked up and startled slightly. "You scared me," she said. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" "Long day," I said. She went to bed. I stayed in the kitchen until 2 in the morning. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I lay in the dark and I replayed everything I could find. Every Tuesday she'd been at Jenna's. Every weekend Marcus had been busy. Every room where the energy had shifted in a way I'd failed to name. The next morning she told me about the movie she'd watched with Jenna. She had a specific title, specific details about a plot she'd either actually researched or been told to say. She was good. That was the thing I kept coming back to. She was so good at this. Over the following week, I started looking at the things I'd been too comfortable to examine. Phone records from our shared plan, Marcus's number, frequently, at hours that made no sense. A receipt I found in an old jacket of Sarah's from a restaurant I'd never been to with her, dated 11 months ago. Instagram messages she'd deleted but not fully cleared. I built a timeline. 14 months! Minimum! My wife and my brother had been together for over a year, and I had been so busy trusting everyone around me that I had simply not seen it. I confronted Sarah on a Friday. She walked in and asked what I wanted for dinner. Like a normal evening, like she hadn't spent the last 14 months dismantling everything. I said, "I saw your car at Marcus's house on Tuesday." The silence that followed told me everything. It wasn't the silence of confusion. It wasn't the scramble of someone buying time for a lie. It was the silence of someone who had been waiting, dreading maybe, but waiting for this exact moment. She sat down at the kitchen table. She didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice. She just looked at me with something that might have been relief and said, "Daniel, I'm so sorry." I asked her how long. She said 14 months. She said it like she'd been counting. I asked if she loved him. She hesitated, just barely, but it was enough. Then she said yes. I asked her who else knew, and that's when her expression changed. After Sarah left, she said she was going to her sister's. I called Marcus. He picked up on the second ring. "Daniel." He said my name the way you say something when you've prepared to say it for a long time. I didn't give him the chance to launch into whatever speech he'd rehearsed. I just said, "Who else knows?" A long enough to be its own answer. "Marcus?" My voice came out very quiet. "Who else knows about you and my wife?" He was silent for a moment. Then he said something I have turned over in my mind every single day since. He said, "Daniel, we thought you knew." The room seemed to tilt. He said their mother had figured it out months ago, that their father had confronted him directly at some point, Marcus had broken down and told him everything. His wife Lisa knew, and my cousin Becca, who'd been at that barbecue last July, who I'd seen having that strange conversation near the back fence. She had pulled Marcus aside after catching them together, and they'd told her everything too. All those people, at every family gathering, every Sunday dinner, every holiday, every single one of them had looked at me and said nothing. And then Marcus said the part that broke something permanently loose inside of me. He said, "We thought someone had told you. We thought you were just dealing with it quietly the way you always do." The way I always do. They had all watched me live inside a lie for over a year, laughing, eating, showing up, being a son and a cousin and a brother, and they had collectively decided that my silence meant I already knew. Not one of them had thought to check. My mother called 2 days later. She asked me to come to the house. She said she wanted to explain. I went. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to see it. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I grew up, where I did homework, where we had birthday cake every year, where I'd sat 100,000 times surrounded by people I thought loved me. And I looked at my parents and waited. My mother cried. She said she hadn't known how to bring it up. She said she'd hoped it would resolve itself. She said she'd prayed about it, which I think was the thing that finally emptied me out completely. My father said he'd told Marcus to come clean, that he'd pressed him more than once. And I sat there and I understood, with a clarity that felt almost cold, that every single person in that room had made a choice. A conscious, deliberate choice. They had chosen the comfort of not having a difficult conversation over the basic decency of telling me the truth about my own marriage. Not one of them had chosen me. I left before I finished my coffee. I haven't been back since. 8 months have passed. Sarah and I are divorced. Marcus and I haven't spoken. My parents text sometimes, holidays, birthdays, and I respond with enough to keep the door from slamming completely shut, because some days I'm not sure I'm ready for that kind of permanent silence. But I think about that porch a lot, the gap in the curtain, the light inside. I was standing on the outside of something that had been built entirely without me, and when I finally looked through that window, I realized it had been built with everyone I loved. I used to think betrayal was loud. I thought it arrived with confrontation and screaming and dramatic confessions. But real betrayal is quiet. Real betrayal is your mother passing the potatoes. It's your father saying, "Let me know if you need anything." It's your cousin laughing at your jokes at a summer barbecue while keeping the thing that would shatter your life folded neatly in her back pocket. Real betrayal is every person who decided that their comfort mattered more than your truth. I thought my marriage ended the night I looked through that window, but the truth is, that night I lost my family too. So now I need to ask you something. If you had been standing on that porch, what would you have done next? Would you have knocked on the door? Driven away? Something else entirely? And what about the family? Is staying silent the same as betrayal? Or do you think they genuinely believed he already knew? Because I've thought about that question for 8 months, and I still don't have an answer that sits right with me. And if you were in his position, could you forgive the silence? Not the affair, the silence. The Sunday dinners, the birthday texts, the people who loved you and said nothing. Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and I want to know where you stand. If stories like this, raw, real, the kind that make you look differently at the people sitting closest to you, if those are the stories that keep you up at night too, consider subscribing to the channel. There's more coming, and some of it is even harder to hear than this. Thanks for being here.